My YouTube channel. If you've seen me before, then welcome back. If not, then I'm glad to see you or hear you, or well, have you see and hear me. I'm not hearing or seeing you, unless you leave comments. You can always leave comments for me. Uh, I want to talk today. I'm very afraid of what's going on in our country. Just very, very afraid. Being a writer and being a reader, I've read a lot of dystopian books. I've read a lot of history. I know what happened in Europe. During the World Wars. I know how they started, and if you don't see the parallels and the similarities between what Trump does and what happened in Germany, then you surely don't know history. So you really should learn history because he's doing everything he can, to do what Hitler did in order to take over that country. From some very nice people. German people are good people, but the leaders, of the Third Reich, no, they weren't. And Trump is using the same playbook, where he calls the real news, he calls them fake news. He's he goes after universities, he goes after education. Of course, if we're not educated, it'll be easier for him to lead because, if you're educated, you know how to stop it and you know what it is and you know what to do to try to avoid it. And I don't know, it's just, and it's not Trump. I mean, Trump's the face of what's going on. It's the Heritage Foundation and places like that where, they're using him as the mouthpiece, a snuggly mouth. I hate Trump's mouth. He makes it. He does that. I mean, okay, well, he does that because he's going after. He's sucking on something. Then that smile. I don't know. I can't even do this. I wish I could imitate Trump. I really do. I don't have that talent, so I don't pretend to do it. But I'm really, but they use him because he'll do whatever they want as long as he gets what he wants. All he cares about is people adoring him, wanting him. That's why he, that whole Nobel Peace Prize thing. He's going to be telling everybody, "Yeah, I'm a Nobel Peace Prize winner now." No, somebody gave you the freaking certificate, or the medal, because you're just so. I mean, here's a guy wanting a peace prize and he's starting wars all over the place. You couldn't get more ridiculous than that. But you can't get more ridiculous than Trump. You honestly, you can't. I can't. And I'm in my 60s. I've never seen anybody like him. And the ones that do are in insane asylums or maybe comedians or something. They're saying wild, crazy things because they're comedians. But he actually, when he says something, though, in a weird way, you have to believe it. It's going to be a lie, but you have to believe it. Not that it's the truth, but it's what he wants. So when he says something like, "No, I won't say cancel the election. They should cancel the election because nobody wants the election's canceled. He's a dictator." Then he says later, "When you think about it, we shouldn't even have an election." He doesn't want the midterms to happen, and that means because it's being discussed behind the scenes. Stephen Miller, the Heritage Foundation, all them, they're telling him if the midterms happen and they happen right the way they should legally, where everyone votes who's allowed to vote, you're going to lose Congress and probably the Senate as well. And when you do that, things are going to come crashing down. So we have to have that not happen. So he's saying this whole, he said that whole thing about they should cancel the election because they don't want the election to happen, and they do have some tools that are again scaring me. Like here's what I really think they plan. They're going to have ICE at elections. Now ICE has no right to be at elections. They're not election personnel. They're not to police it and everything, but they're going to say they're using it to keep not minorities, illegals from illegally voting. Now, if you're an illegal, you can't vote. But they're not going to. But they're going to use it as an excuse anyway. So I predict right now that ICE is going to be all over the elections, coming up, and they're going to be doing it in mostly blue states, because that's where although they'll probably do it in red states as well. So if you've got dark skin and you go to vote, very well likely that the ICE agents all show up all weaponized, with their gas canisters and their guns and just everything that they're using to weaponize, against peaceful protests. But they're going to be at those sites in large numbers, wearing their stupid camouflage uniforms, in these vehicles that, I mean, how much money have we poured into ICE? It sucks that my tax dollars and your tax dollars are paying for ICE. I hate that. I hate that. And then one of them was bragging that he makes $200,000 a year. An agent, calling him an agent. You're not an agent. Most of them are out of shape. They're probably Proud Boys. They're gun nuts. Second Amendment nuts. One of them just said, "I would do this for no pay at all." Because he wants to terrorize people with guns. Just and notice that ICE is only showing up in the blue states. So are they going to? They're going to say that all the immigrants only go to blue states. That's not true. So why are they only in the blue states? Well, because they want to weaponize against the blue states politically, and they want to scare people out of voting. They just want to scare people out of voting, and it might. And this is what scares me. It might work. They could do it. I mean, or Trump will declare martial law. He'll take all of the protests that are against ICE, the peaceful protests, and use them to declare martial law. And if he has martial law, he can call off the vote probably, and then there's no vote. And then kind of wonder too is with the Congress people whose terms would expire this year, if there was no vote, do they automatically get extended? So or do they just simply, those people fall away from from being able to be elected? They'll no longer be Congress people or senators or anything like that. So I don't know what martial law would be like here. In Germany we know what it turned into, but I don't have the knowledge on what it did to their voting. So I don't know if they actually had any voting or anything after that. So maybe there's some education I could have on my own. So anyway, we have a democratic crisis here. And the people who are protesting against ICE are doing everything they should. They should continue to do that. And the other reason they're doing this, of course, is Trump's loving all of this. All the protests. He's loving ICE being a big problem right now, because that has us not talking about Epstein. How often do you hear Epstein being talked about now? This is a huge. He likes anything that will take away from Epstein and the way he's being scrutinized and will probably later, hopefully, be investigated by real Department of Justice people instead of the fake people that we have in the Department of Justice right now. So he knows what could happen to him, and that's why he's doing all these things. So we're dumb if we don't do something about it. I think we have to keep protesting, even though the protests themselves could cause the martial law. I think we just have to keep speaking up against them, because that's what we are. That's what Americans are. Well, United States people are. I mean, that's what how our nation was founded. So we need to keep following that. So I guess I just wanted to throw that warning out there, have people talk about it, and when Trump says something like they should cancel the election, that's what they really want, and that's what they're really talking about. That's what they're scheming to do. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find valid reasons and methods to do it. And if they can't do that, then they're going to intimidate people at the voter polls. That's what they're going to do, and they're going to scare people out of voting and hope that they win it that way. And if they don't win it that way, we're looking at martial law. That's what we're up against. And I say that because, again, as I talked about earlier, I've always been a reading geek, and history, this is history, and you have to learn by history. And if you don't, as the saying goes, if you don't learn by history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I don't want to be doomed. So keep fighting, keep working at it. Um, so that's all I've got on that today. I will add something on my own writing, because I my writing geek stuff. Now, 3 of my disability short stories have been accepted by magazines for publishing, and the 4th one is on SNRA's site, their national health organization. So I'm getting, so my short stories are getting a little bit of publicity there, so that's good. And I wrote another one. I thought I was done writing them, and sometimes the ideas for more short stories come to me, and so I'm going to keep doing it. So anyway, if you want to check out my writing and me, I'm at www.normcowie.com. That's COWIE. Thank you for watching, listening, and stand up for democracy. Fight this guy. Fight this orange guy. We can't let him win. I mean, I never. It feels immoral to say this, but I can't wait till the day where I never hear that guy again for whatever reason. So anyway, take care, everybody. All right, thank you. Bye.